Hello, my name is Phaedra and this is Phaedra Gardeners. We are flower farmers in Australia. We also have a retail florist business. And today what I want to talk about is how to plan for those huge sales days. So for a florist, the main 2 days where you make the most amount of money is Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. We have just had our 3rd Valentine's Day, and we are in a nice routine with how to do that without being too stressed and what to do and at what time to prepare for the lead up for Valentine's Day. So we're going to go through all of that. It actually starts 4 weeks before Valentine's Day. That's sort of the latest you can leave it to get started on it. You can use this information to start pacing yourself out to make the day way less stressful. The first year we did it, we barely slept. I was up until about 3 a.m. There's actually a video on here about that. I think it'll be a couple of years ago, something about the biggest sales day of the year or something. So you can try and find that. I will put it in the comments, in the description of this video, so you can find that easier if you want to watch that. We've come a long way since that video. We don't sit up till, well, actually I didn't even sit up past midnight this year. So much better, much less stress. So let's get into it and go through what the different steps are. So the first part of this timeline is 4 weeks out from the date. So at that point, you want to start advertising. You're advertising at every single point along the way. But at this point, you want to start advertising what you're going to be selling, or if you don't have photos of those items yet, you want to start sort of getting your customer base, your community, your followers, your customers, kind of remind them that this date is coming up, because many people are just living life and they don't remember that these big days are coming up. They sort of don't realize it's Valentine's Day until a day or so before. Sometimes they wake up that morning and get a little nudge that it's Valentine's Day. And especially men, it's sort of a very last minute thing often. So you can start reminding them, preparing them so that they know that it's coming up. At 4 weeks out, if you need babysitting, you need to book it in. Don't get caught out where you need someone to mind your kids and you haven't sort of got somebody or a few people sorted for that. Even if it's a grandparent, just double check that, you know, the dates, and you'll probably need at least the 2 days before the big day. I actually find it quite easy to have children on me on the actual day because all the work has already been done for us. In addition to any sort of babysitting, if you're going to be needing staff or helpers, you want to try and lock them in at this point. So 4 weeks out, you are going to remind them as time moves on, but you want to start finding out who's available and who you think is going to be reliable enough to actually turn up on the days you want them. It doesn't always work out, and more often than not, people pull out. So I would say book more people than you think you're going to need. Just ask them, look, if I need extra help, are you going to be available? It is helpful if you can pay them. You're going to make a lot of money on these days. I can tell you that. These are huge days in sales. You can afford to pay for the helpers, and that helps get them there as well. But it is a big day. It's a lot of work. The next thing you need to do is sit down and work out what the plan is, how many flowers you need to buy, what you're going to make. So the way I do that is I first decide how much money I want to make. So this particular year, I wanted to make $7,000. Then from that, I will work backwards. So we normally mark up by 3. So whatever the cost of the flowers are, we times it by 3, and then we add a little bit extra to cover the materials and things and our time, and then that's the cost of our finished product for our florist business. For Valentine's and Mother's Day, if you're buying in flowers, they will often get a little bit more expensive. So you've got to take that into account. The other thing is there's such a high demand for the flowers. One way to sort of curb that demand a bit is to increase the prices slightly. So what we do for Valentine's Day is we times it by 4. So instead of doing it times by 3, we've times by 4. So once I figure out how much I want to make, so we're going to say $7,000, I divide that into 4. That's how many flowers I need. That's how much worth of wholesale flowers I need to have, whether that's purchasing it in or having my own. If you're relying solely on your own flowers, you need to go out and have a look a month before and sort of make a prediction of how many flowers you think you're going to have ready for Valentine's Day. Put a price on them, and then that goes into your calculations. So for us, with the $7,000, we would want to be spending around $1,750 on flowers. So then you want to work out what the flowers are. And the way that we do that is we will work out how many of each price range we're going to make. This is just scribbles on a piece of paper, mind you. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I've got a few years of Valentine's Days and Mother's Days up my sleeve to kind of know what I'm going to need. And I know that I could turn over $7,000 of flowers and sell out early. So I already know that. If it's your first year, it is a little bit trickier. It's a bit riskier. What we did in our first year, and this depends on your area too, we just decided to spend $1,000 on the flowers, and we could afford that. Let's just say absolutely nothing sold. We could afford to take that gamble and just lose the $1,000. The other thing is that year I bought flowers that I could either dry really nicely after. Most things will dry. And I had some projects in mind of what I would do that next day, the day after the big sales day, if I had a lot of product left over. So what my plan was, I was going to build a big archway. I had a few little arrangements I could make up, and I was going to use those flowers to get some really nice projects done, get photos of them, and have them on the website. So I had a backup plan that first year. So if it's your first year, you can basically just pull an amount out of the air and go and spend it. Or you can think to yourself, how much can I afford to lose? And that's where you're going with it. For us this year, we needed up to $1,750 worth of flowers to make the $7,000. I actually bought in, I think in the end it was $1,250 worth of flowers. And in the field, I sort of guesstimated that we had about $500 worth out there. So that is how we got that initial purchase in. At this point, 4 weeks out, just so I know what I'm ordering at the wholesaler, because you're going to be needing to do that next week, I sit down and I work out my price points, like what prices I'm going to be selling for the flowers. So for us, because we sell roadside when we do these, we have 35s, 35s, 55s, 80s, 95, and 110. They're our price points. The roses, I'll buy in red roses. They are only in the higher priced items. So that's something I can get out of the way. I bought in 100 red roses, and they are all the $110 arrangements. And then they're also on the website. So I'll put 5 in each. I'll put 6 in each arrangement. So you work out how many of those you can make. I use baby's breath. So I worked out how many bunches of that I needed, which I bought in 10 bunches of that. I then sort of go through with the Chrissies. Roughly, I'll have 1 in each bouquet from the $55 price range up. And you've just got to sit down and really try and work out how many bouquets and sort of what's going into what at this point. So you've got a rough idea of how much product you're going to make from what you're purchasing in, and you make sure that whatever your goal amount was, you're going to be able to make that with what you're going to sell. Or if, let's say you've decided I can afford $1,000 worth of flowers, you're going to turn that into $4,000 worth of product. You want to make sure these items that you're making are going to actually add up to $4,000. So you do have to sit there for a little while and tweak things. Once you've done this once and you've done it for 1 year, it's very easy. It can take a really long time that first year though, but just persist, get it done so you've got a really good grasp on how much you're going to make. Make sure you're going to do that and do your profit margin correctly. But it's also going to help you when you're making the flowers. You've got your plan of exactly what you're making. Another thing to note at this point is we will buy in a lot of native flowers. This year I bought in 20 native bouquets. I'll put the price up on the screen of how much that cost me wholesale. The reason I buy a lot of those is because they last a really long time. And a little trick to help you down the track when you're actually making the flowers, you can make up native bouquets or let's say long lasting flowers. You can make those bouquets up 3 or 4 days before the big day, and it takes a huge load off. The other benefit for us with the natives is they dry really well. So if they didn't sell, we are actually able to hang them upside down and dry them and use them for a project later. So we're not losing money on it. It's just that the money's now delayed. So it's another little backup. Another thing at this 4-week mark, very important, make sure you've ordered in your florist supplies. So that's things like papers, ribbons, make sure you've got enough buckets. In most supermarkets, especially in Australia, you can go to the fresh produce department. They are throwing out the buckets that the flowers come in, or they were. That's how we got all of our buckets. We got them for free and they were more than happy to collect them up for us. They just stacked them in a pile and we'd go pick them up once a week until we had enough buckets. We have about 150 buckets because you will need a lot. You don't want to be re-washing buckets in the middle of all of this. So make sure you get those supplies ready, place the orders, make sure they're at your venue or your place way earlier than you're going to need them. All right, let's move on to 3 weeks out. It's at this point for us, the wholesalers want our orders. So at this point, you would want to be placing your order if you're buying in flowers or you're buying from other farms. You really want to place the orders at this point to make sure they're in, send, however you place the order, make sure you get confirmation that the order has been received. So you know you're going to get it, work out what date you're going to pick it up. If you leave it too much later than this, some wholesalers in Australia at least will close off their orders because they need to plan. They're purchasing in huge amounts of flowers for this day. You will want to figure out by this point also have another look at your flowers, see what you've got there, but also have a look at what foliage you can forage. We don't buy in any foliage at all. In those native bouquets, they do come with a fair bit of foliage, and it's more foliage than what we would use in a bouquet for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day. Because our bouquets just aren't as big for those days. They're a little bit smaller than usual for reasons I explained earlier. So you want to go and find out what you can forage. You may also be able to forage things from other people. Last year, we were able to forage a beautiful little white berry called a snowberry because a guy was selling his property and he had a whole row of snowberries and he didn't need them. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, made a plan and went back and cut a whole heap of it. So I got all of that for free. You may also think you've got foliage that you have never used before. You need to run the tests on it and check their vase life. So cut some, put them in buckets and just sit them and wait and see how long they hold for. Some foliage and extra plants aren't going to work as cut flowers, so you just need to check that at this point. And again, we're advertising. At every point you're advertising. So at the 3-week mark, you would hope at this point that you've got the products up that people can pre-order, or you've got photos of stuff, something that people know what they're going to expect. If you're selling roadside like us, or you're selling on a farm stand, or if you're selling through another local business, at this point you really want to be able to tell and show people what you're going to be offering for this event. Which does mean if you're purchasing in things, you probably do need to go and buy in just a small amount, enough to make up a couple of samples so you can get those photos done, do some videos of it, get as much footage of those products as you can at this point, and then try and sell them off after you've got that. At this 3-week mark, 3 weeks out, you also want to make sure all your signage is sorted. You don't want to be sitting up the night before realizing you don't have price tags or you don't have signage. Get that done now before the stress starts to hit. Just sit down, print things off, laminate things, order things in, whatever you need. Get that done pretty early so that you're not trying to do that after making 100 bouquets. You can also at this point set up some posts for social media that are scheduled so that you don't then have to think about it later on. You should already have your pictures of products that you're going to be selling. And hopefully you've taken lots of different photos with that. You might take, if you have a look on my Instagram on the Noble Flowers, that's our florist site. If you have a look on there, I've got all different angles of things. I've got me holding things. You can see I buy Crocs that match the occasion. So I've got my red Crocs for Valentine's Day. It just sort of in the background. You just get lots of different views of what you're selling. So you've got lots of content to be pushing out over the next 3 weeks because it feels like you are repeating yourself and annoying people, but how you're going to sell stuff. That's how you keep on top of people's minds that this is coming up, they want to buy from you. That's what you're aiming for. The other thing at this point is to just, if you've got sales outlets, like if you're selling through stores or, the cafe on the corner, double check with them that it's still okay. We're all good for this. This is when I'll deliver, lunchtime the day before, or whatever the plan is. If you're selling roadside, like we do, make sure that your permits are in place. Just double check it. Make sure you've got the paperwork. So if anybody comes along and says, you shouldn't be selling here, you can say, actually, I've got a permit. Here it is. Have it all ready. Have all that paperwork, the labels, the signage, all in one place, ready to go. 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out is sort of the period for us that is a bit of a lull. We've got a lot of that really preliminary stuff done, and it's too early to start on the flowers. And we've also got our photos, everything should be done by this point. Advertise. We're advertising again. At this point, we will also prep the space that we're using and start setting things up. So I will go to our studio. I'll do a big clean out, which you may have seen in a previous video. I had to clean that space up. It was pretty bad. Set up your workstations. Make sure you've got all of your stock. One of the things that I do at this point is I use the mod vases. So that's those cardboard vases that all deliveries go out in. I will make up a whole heap of them. If you've got a helper, this is a really good job for somebody else to do. But I'll just make a whole heap up of them, put the liners in, and then store them on a shelf. So as I need them, I can just grab them off. I'm not wasting time on the busiest day of the year, one of the 2 busiest days of the year, making up vases. You don't want to be doing that. So prep things. If you're using floral foam, cut everything to size. Don't soak it yet, but cut everything to size. Make sure it's fitting in the vessels that it's going in. Just have it all set up and ready. You can cut ribbons and string if you want to. I find it just becomes very messy, and it doesn't take too long on the day just to snip off ribbon, but I do put it in something that's very easy for me to pull it out of. Just get everything, as much things as you can possibly think of, prepped and set up and made up and ready. And at this point, because you've sort of laid everything out, it's a really good time to double check you've got all the supplies you need, because you've still got time to get them in if you don't have enough. Place those orders, get things on their way to you. 1 week out, advertise. So you want to, at this point, the advertising picks up. You want to be advertising every day. We have been just advertising once a week or twice a week. It's now every day. If you're on social media, put stories up, because you will start to have more content at this point. This week before you're going to pick up the flowers this week, you can show them or you're picking flowers, like anything that you can use as an excuse to remind people that you will be selling flowers for this big day. Use it and start. You can make it fun too. Like you can do little quizzes, or you can kind of get people engaged with your business, show your friendly side and get people excited to come and support you. Make sure your buckets are all washed and ready and stacked, so that as you're making things, you're just grabbing them and filling them up with water and solution. I would recommend that you have purchased some sort of conditioning solution for the flowers at this point, or a holding solution. We use the Crystal Professional 2. It works really well. It goes in every single bucket, especially for us at this time of year. It is hot. It can be really hot selling on the side of the road, and that Professional 2 helps with that a little bit. We've found that it helps the flowers not freak out about the heat. We have pretty good success selling in the heat. If you've got babysitting, double check at this point. Check on the babysitter that they're still good to go. Everything's looking good, that they're going to be able to turn up and help you. Double check the dates with them and say the date and the day. Right now I can't even think, but just, this year, the 14th of February was a Wednesday. So you might say, I'm just double checking that you're still available to help me on the 12th. What am I trying to say? Monday the 12th, Tuesday the 13th, and Wednesday the 14th of February this week. So just say that, because sometimes people have got their days or dates confused, and this will help them realize early, so you're not sort of left hanging without a babysitter. Also check on any staff or helpers that they're still available, because they're going to be turning up soon. Something else you can do if you're the person that needs to provide all the meals for the family, or even just for yourself, at this point, make sure that you have a plan for how you're going to eat. It's really important because especially for your helpers and your kids, if anybody gets tired, you're all going to get tired. But if anybody gets hungry on top of that tiredness, everybody's going to get cranky. It makes for a really bad experience. And I know from experience, if I keep everybody fed, everybody stays happy. So get some snacks in. Make sure you've got easy to grab snacks. And it doesn't have to be unhealthy. It can be healthy, but make sure you've got it there so it's easy. Drinks for people and the kids. And also, if you are into meal prepping, I would prep some meals, pop them in the fridge or the freezer so that they can be pulled out in the morning, thawed out and cooked, or plan, for the crock pot or the slow cooker. Just have some things in place. I'm really lucky because I've got a daughter that loves to cook dinner for us, and I paid her to cook us dinners for the week, which was really good, and she made some extra money. She was happy. 4 days out. It's at this point that we are picking up our flowers from the wholesaler, and maybe you are too. You might be picking flowers up from farms. At this point, for us, we are picking all the foliage that we need and we're storing it in buckets. And as flowers come in, so we will pick up the flowers. If you're buying from a wholesaler, they'll often come wrapped in plastic and they're bunched quite tight. As soon as I get them home, I will unwrap them and strip the stems, snip the bottom of the stems, put them in buckets, but I won't pack them in tight like the wholesalers pack in. I will just put them in buckets so there's some airflow around. The last thing you need is anything to start developing mold because there was no airflow. We also, in every single bucket, will be using the Crystal Professional 2. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just use it for everything because I really like it and it works really well for us. And it is the middle of summer for us during Valentine's. It's very hot. All of these flowers need to be stored in the cold and dark. So we will store them in our studio. All the curtains are closed and the cooler is on full pelt. So you want to have a space where everything's going to be kept cool and dark. If you haven't already bought the snacks, go and get them. At this point, you're about to run out of time to be able to go and do that. You're getting to the point where you're going to have to send somebody else off to do that. And food is the last thing you want to be thinking about. You just want it really to be easy to grab. Advertise. Again, we're always advertising at this point. You also, at this point, would need to sit down and work out. If you've got helpers or staff, you want to sit down and work out who's doing what. Even if you're working out that different people are on different stations or whatever their task is, make it really easy for them to find it. You don't really want people to be constantly saying, what do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next? And that will happen because if people get things done quicker, they're going to be ready for the next task. But you can just have a simple sheet that has their name and what their main task is for that particular thing. We don't have helpers. We have realized that we can turn over this amount of flowers just with the two of us. And if we decide we want to make more than that on one of these occasions, we are going to have to get helpers. But at this point, we're happy with what we're making and we don't need to have any helpers or staff. But you might be different. You might want to make a lot more money, or you might have a different business model to us and need help. Hopefully at this point, you've got some orders that have come in. You can start prepping a delivery run of sort of what order things are going to go in. And then as more orders come in, you just slot them in. I usually just print the orders off on a clipboard and I highlight the address and I'll just start putting them in the clipboard in order of the route that I'm going to take to get these delivered as efficiently as possible. You can also plug this is what we do on the actual day. We plug all the addresses into Google Maps, but we do it on our phone. And then you can drag the addresses around so that they will order, and then you'll see the route becomes it makes much more sense. 3 days out, advertising. And then this is the day that we make up all of our native bouquets because they're the ones that will last a long time. We store them in their buckets, in the Crystal Professional 2, and they will be fine. I mean, crystals, natives last weeks. So they're a really good one to make up early, and that's out of the way. So I will just kind of put them onto one side of our studio and it's all done. And you also might have other flowers coming at this point. Everything that comes in, prep it. So just strip the stems, place them in buckets, and sort of don't let any of that bank up on you. Just as it comes in, get it done. 2 days out, if you are buying in roses and you're planning to reflex them, which is where you open them out, so you open out the petals to make them look like they've opened up, you want to get those roses to room temperature. So you want to pull those out 2 days before and start cooling them, not warming them up, but you just want them at room temp, because they won't reflex properly if they're cold. The petals will just bounce back up. They need to be warm to be able to reflex those petals. Not warm. I keep saying that like you don't want them to get warm, but you don't want them cold. And those roses will get reflexed the next day. So they sort of, over 24 hours, will just kind of lose the chill factor in their petals so that you can do it. At this point, the 2 day before mark, I am making up as many bouquets as I possibly can. Everything except anything that's got roses in it. I leave the roses till last. And for you, depending on what flowers you've got in, anything that's a little bit fragile or has a shorter vase life, don't do that yet. Do absolutely everything else and leave the fragile things or the very expensive things. That's why I leave the roses to last. And I also have roses coming in on order. So people are placing orders, the pre-orders of the roses. So I'm just kind of just waiting to the last minute to do those. So you'll have to sort of gauge what you've got and figure that out. But essentially, as of 2 days before, you're just constantly making bouquets. The day before, this is when things start to get really crazy. If you're only choosing to have helpers for one day, this is the day that you want them. And then on the actual day, you may just want a delivery driver. The way we do it, we have the bulk of stuff made before the actual day. I actually have pretty much everything made before the actual day that we're selling. So the only thing we may need on the actual day is a delivery driver. You want to advertise again. We start selling the afternoon before, so I want to have everything finished by about lunchtime the day before. If I don't get it all finished, which I didn't this year, I need to have a good assortment of at least half, which means I'm making up those rose bouquets, at least half of them, making up half of everything I need. I had more than half made, but essentially that afternoon, Moroni then hops in the car and he goes out and sells roadside. Once he leaves, I am then sort of off the job. I've got to get kids sorted. I've got to get ready to take down another load. We actually had a big storm and it was amazing because it didn't actually hit until about 6:30. So we finished up and we came home and we just missed it, which was really good. We had really good sales that day before. There's some people that will grab the flowers the day before. So, and especially Mother's Day, we don't sell on Mother's Day at all. We sell the day before. So we're catching those people that are doing this early. But then I will come home and that night, so I sort of, the family know that I'm unavailable from when we get home. That's it. They've got to fend for themselves. So I will then go back out to the studio and I will just work through getting everything finished until it's done. And the very first year I was up until about 3 a.m. The second year it wasn't as bad, just after midnight, I think. This year I was finished by 11:30. So over the years you get better at it because you get a good routine. But because I got all of that work done before the day before, so 2 days out, I had a lot less to get done. But at this point, I will also make up all the rose tubes, make sure they're ready to go, kind of getting ready for the day, getting everything ready for the day. I will prep any orders that have come in, and I also close off website orders at this point, so the night before, because the actual day of becomes very unpredictable for us. We had a really good sales night the night before, and we probably had less than half to take out on the actual day. So I don't want orders coming through and I've got to scramble and get things held aside so I can go pick them up and deliver them. I don't really want to have last minute orders coming in, just for the way that we do things. If you've got a florist shop and you've got a shop front, that works much easier. But for us, we're 30 minutes out of town. It is a big operation to do last minute orders. So I shut that down. The other thing is we know we're going to sell out. So we know everything we take down roadside is going to be gone, which it was gone by 2:30. So you can decide when you want to close off orders. Keeping in mind, if you close them off too early, lots of people order late. Like, they think of this very late. We had phone calls on the day and I had to tell people, I'm really sorry, we've sold out, like, that afternoon. So some florists will shut down orders a day or two beforehand. We don't. We just do it midnight the night before. You know, it catches all the people that have done it pretty last minute. It just doesn't catch anybody that's ordering on the day. The day. For us, the day is actually a lot less stressful than every other day leading up to it. The things to note for the day are, make sure you are where you said you're going to be on time. We have had people waiting for us to turn up knowing we're going to be there at 7 a.m. And it's often tradies, like, they're heading to work, they want to try and get organised before they go to work. So if you're turning up 30 minutes late, it's going to really mess them up. Just make sure you are where you say you're going to be. Make sure if you've got a shop front, the door's open. If you've got a roadside stand, it's fully stocked and ready to go. If you can be there a little bit earlier than you say, that's even better, because people will be waiting for the flowers. And it's just nice. We also make sure on the day that our phones are on us. We've got the ringer up, turned up, and we're answering calls. Even sometimes people will call and I'm already in town, ready to go. I can go do that delivery, so I'll do it. But even just to answer the call, if you can't help them out, they know. Like, you can say to them, look, we're really sorry. We've already sold out. We can't take any more orders today. You might be able to give them a name of another florist or someone else that you know who's still open. And it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of a network to know who's got what and where you can direct people to. They are really grateful for it. And again, just make sure everybody's got food and drinks. Make sure that your delivery plan is well set out for whoever's delivering for you. The route is set, everything's in order. Make sure everything's labeled really well. So I will have the bouquet with the card and everything. It's ready to go. I have an extra little card just slipped in under the paper clip of who that's for, their address, and I'll also have like one of one. So that just means that one bouquet is the only thing that's being delivered to this address, or one of two. And then sometimes there's chocolates. So on the chocolates, there'll be the exact same card with the name and address, but then two of two. So whoever's delivering knows they've got to grab two things and they've got to go find that other thing wherever they've packed it. Often they're packing it together, so it's easy. So everything gets delivered really nice and easily. And when they get to that delivery address, they just pull off those cards that have just the name and the address, that extra bit of paper. So the deliveries are really, for us, the only logistical thing. We're not done with deliveries until about 6 o'clock that night. It just took us all day to do the deliveries. But because I had everything ready to go, I wasn't having to make any bouquets up on the day. And if you're doing this yourself and you're not having any help, I feel like that is the key. Do not get to a point where on the day you're scrambling to still make bouquets. It is really stressful, and it feels like such a nice day. We enjoy Valentine's Day again because we're just selling the flowers or delivering the flowers on that day. I hope this helps. I am putting together a checklist. I will pop information down in the description of this video. I'll add it in of where you can go and download that checklist so that you can, everything that's in this video will be on a checklist. You can just tick it off and have a visual of what you need to do and when you need to do it. Wishing you all the luck with the big upcoming day that you're preparing for, and I will see you next time.